Hello guys and welcome back. Oh my goodness, before I even start this video, pause, hold on. This is important. Guys, 63 subscribers, oh my goodness. I cannot believe it, y'all. Thank you so much for the support. It really means a lot to me. It takes a lot for me to actually do this on top of everything I have going on. So I really appreciate those who are supporting this for me, and I really thank you guys. I hope you guys are learning something new. And for those who are new to the channel, my name is Paige Polabi. I post videos every week on topics related to money, mindset, and business. I share my strategies, my opinion, and how I'm maneuvering and share with you guys in order to motivate and also help you guys with different strategies that I'm doing and also other people are doing. Now, so let me get into what I want to talk about today. Wait, before I even do all that, make sure you guys are all subscribed. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Okay, let's get into today's video. Okay, to house hack now or to wait for a market crash? Honestly, guys, this is a question that I've been sitting and kind of like pondering on for a very long time. And before I even start getting into this topic, I just want to start by saying I'm not in real estate. I've never been involved in real estate, and I'm just gonna share my opinions of the way I see things and to really share my strategy. And you guys comment down below yours also after this video, and make sure you guys share this video with your friends also. Okay, so like I said, this is not just even house hacking, but just buying a property in general, right? So before I even get into how to answer this and how I see it, for those who stay till the end, I'll give you guys one more extra tip principle at the end of how I see things. So first, let's get started. I kind of want to go over some of the basics for those who might not be aware of how real estate works and kind of how real estate investing works, and make sure everybody's on board. So first, I want to start off with, what is real estate, right? Some people might not know, but real estate is just property consisting of land or building. So essentially, it's just an asset that consists of land and building. So why real estate investing? As you guys always see, everything is real estate. All this Instagram ads, Facebook ads, and just everything is just so much about real estate. But one of the first thing is that like real estate has created 90% of the world's millionaire, guys. This is bizarre. So this tells you it's a very lucrative industry of investing. Next is it's very tax favored asset, meaning that you can write off your depreciation and things like that, and you're being paid to own it, guys. So it's very important to understand that. Now, next is everybody needs a place to stay. So this is part of Maslow's hierarchy of need, and it's very important to understand this because the needs that we need, the basic human needs, is food, clothes, and shelter. And being that real estate is that shelter that we all need in life, this applies to everybody. Next is I want to break down the different ways you can make money in real estate, right? So the first one is wholesaling. So what wholesaling is essentially is you're the middleman between a seller and a buyer. To put this in the simplest of terms, wholesalers are those who go find people who want to sell their property really quickly in distress for cash. And the wholesaler themselves don't have the cash, but they're posing like they have the cash, and they get their property on the contract, and then they go sell that contract to an actual investor, to the people who actually have the cash and are willing to buy and invest in that property. And they make money off the spread as to how much they up the price. So for example, really quickly, let's say a wholesaler finds a property that someone is trying to sell in distress, and they want to sell that property for $70,000. The wholesaler then takes that contract that he has with that seller and takes it to an investor and say, hey, I have this property under contract for $80,000. So they're going to be making $10,000, and that investor is still buying it at a very cheap price, and that investor is either looking to own it or flip it. Which leads me to the next way you can make money in real estate, and that's flipping houses. So flipping houses, essentially, these are things like you see on HGTV, which is very glorified. Essentially, what you're doing is buying a very distressed property and You're renovating and updating the units, putting granite countertops, you're hardwood floors, updating the bathroom to standing showers, glass door showers, and things like that. And you're hoping to sell it at a higher price to make money off that spread that way. Last but not least is an investor. So an investor is essentially someone who's looking to make money off of holding and renting out the property for higher than the mortgage price of what they're getting. This varies very, very wide, but this is just a quick, broad overview. So next is like, what is house hacking? So house hacking is essentially the art of living for free in a perfect world, right? So essentially, what you do with house hacking is you have a 2-unit property, and it's just 2 separate units as a standalone as 1 unit. And here I have a quick example to depict to you guys, but really quickly, house hacking is essentially being able to try and live for free by living in 1 unit and renting out the other unit at the price of the mortgage. So what you would do is you buy this property and your mortgage and everything all in is $1,000 a month, and you rent this other unit at $1,000 a month. And in a perfect world, essentially, you don't have any housing costs. Now, this isn't a perfect world. As great as this is for real estate does have a high barrier to entry, meaning that the cost of entry is very high. So to really answer this, to either wait on a market crash or to actually just buy now, here's what I really think. I think there are 2 sides to this coin. I think it's first understanding that, asking yourself the question, why do I want to invest in real estate? And next is coming up with your own investing real estate principles that you're always going to stick to before you actually go into a deal. These are things you're always going to live by, the structure you're always going to follow for you to make a wise and sound investment, to make sure your money is actually working for you. Those are the 2 things I think you really need first to answer the question for yourself if you either want to invest now or wait for the market to crash. Now, I'll also get into my principles and what I think at the end and how I feel about this. So first is my real estate investing principles. Number 1 is I invest for cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. That is the key word I like to look for when I consider something an investment. For me to consider something an investment, it has to pay me to own it. And what I mean by cash flow is some people invest for appreciation. So what that essentially means is you're investing, you buy a property hoping the price is going to go up over time. By all means, that's another way for investing in real estate, but I'm a big believer in cash flow, meaning that the property has to pay me to own it. Now, the thing about cash flow is this varies a whole lot depending on how you get into and purchase that property. Now, let's say you're looking to use FHA to do a house hacking, for example. You have to factor in that you're only going to be putting down 3.5%. That means your mortgage might be a little higher, so you might not really even cash flow in that property. Next is, let's say you're doing a 5% down because it's your first property you're ever going to purchase, and you can do a 5% down with that. And shout out to David for pointing that out. If you haven't checked that interview out, I'll throw a card up here. Definitely, I advise you to check it out. David is a young real estate mogul that owns 5 properties at the age of 25. You can check out his strategy, but that's after you watch this video. Okay, so really quickly, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. I look at the cash flow, depending on what strategy I'm implementing to buy this property, the cash flow has to make sense. Next is I look at the land to value, and essentially what this means is, and shout out to Jason Hartman, he's one of the real estate gurus I actually listen to because he looks at real estate investing from also a macro level perspective. What essentially the land to value mean is how much in the definition, which takes me back to the definition here of what real estate is. When you have a real estate property, you have a land and you also have the house itself. So essentially, when you're thinking of real estate is just a bunch of commodities put together to make a house, right? And underneath that house, you have a asset also, which is the land. So in the eyes of an insurance, they look at the land value also in comparison to the value of the actual building on the land. So for this one, I look for a low land value in comparison to the actual value of the house. And Jason pointed out that historically, this gives you what type of market you are going to be in with your investment, if it's a cyclical market or a linear market. The next thing I look at and I try to make sense of is the rent to value ratio. So this is essentially what this means, and I try to look at this as at a 0.8 to 1 value ratio. And shout out to George Gammon. This is a lot of principles that a lot of game that he showed on here when he talked about this. So essentially, the way you calculate the rent to value ratio is how much you're going to be making in rent versus the price you're paying for it. So a really quick example here is, let's say a property costs $100,000. Essentially, for you to have a RV ratio, rent to value ratio of 1, you need to be renting that property at $1,000 a month. This is one of the things I look at if the property even makes sense at all to even invest in, because essentially this will tell you if you're overpaying for that property or not. The last and least thing that I want to actually take importance on when talking about investment properties, having an emergency fund for the property. Now this is very important because essentially you're going to be an investor into this property. You're going to have an asset that has, like I said, commodities attached to it. So if something like the roof goes bad, the water heater goes bad, something drastic really occurs, you have to cover that cost. And sometimes these costs can be very hefty. And if you can't cover that cost, then essentially you could potentially lose your property. Now, what I try to keep in mind when analyzing the deal is I like to leave at least 5% of the value of the price of what the property is listing for. I like to see if I have at least 5% of that as an emergency fund saved up for the property before I even invest, just in case if anything occurs, I could cover that at least to the most. Just like your personal life, how it's important for you to have an emergency fund for yourself, just in case if anything occurs in life. Now, these are some of my principles I just thought I'd share. For those who's made it this far, this is pretty much the end. Okay, the one thing I also want to look at is, I like looking at also a quick gem is, I like looking at the population growth over time for that specific area I'm looking at the property in. I like looking at a very nice and consistent population growth and making sure the inflow of people flowing to that city, that town, or whatever it might be, that state, is very high and is good and steady and has been steady over time. Another thing I like, and I think is very important, now this is my opinion, is whether it's a house hack or not, is that if you look at it right now, as most of you may know now, I like looking at things also from the macroeconomics perspective, and that's what I mean when I say macro, is right now the Feds have very low interest rates, guys. Extremely low interest rates right now, and they're actually looking to cut interest rates twice more probably this year. What this means is it's very cheap right now to buy properties, because right now you're getting interest rates of 3%, 4%. These are very low interest rates on the mortgages, because if you think about it, it's cheap money that you're borrowing now to leverage that money to make more money for yourself. And this is how I see it right now. The one thing that is making me very itchy to get into real estate right now is the very low interest rate from the Feds. Now, regardless of some of my principles here, I might break some of these because of how low interest rates are currently at right now. But if I find a property that actually makes sense and cash flows and covers majority of what my principles are when it comes to real estate investing, I would definitely be getting into the real estate game. And this is kind of how I kind of look at real estate as a whole when it comes to investing. Now, guys, I want you guys to comment down below which some of your principles are and what you guys look for when looking at a property or analyzing the deal. Like I said, I'm just sharing some of mine just to open up the conversation. But with that being said, if you made it this far, you already know you are a real one. I really appreciate you. And thank you guys. As always, move with purpose, have purposeful thinking. You guys have a killer rest of the week, and I'm out.